welcome everyone to this panel discussion titled Liberal Arts Education, Creating Leaders in a Complex World, which is hosted by Habib University. Admissions are currently open at Habib University for all 6 of our innovative programs, and I'm very excited to have both myself and all of our panelists explain a bit more about the importance of liberal arts education, particularly in the context of Pakistan. Habib's Liberal Core is inspired by Stanford University's successful breadth governance model that adopts a unique perspective on liberal education. Their undergraduate program in computer science is one of the best in the world, and their humanities core is unique in the way that it provides an entry point into global and comparative humanities. The breadth in traditional modes of education tends to limit one to disciplinary requirements. However, the liberal arts model emphasizes teaching how to view the world in a broader, more intellectual manner. In virtually any field, this model uses all the ingredients guaranteed for success. This fusion between the liberal arts and the sciences teaches you how to think more openly and provides new opportunities for growth. Similarly, the Habib Liberal Core is adapted to Pakistan's own unique context and involves an educational experience that provides a holistic toolkit of both technical and thoughtful skills. So in this sense, liberal arts education is the best answer for what is to come in the 21st century. As a result, this session is going to delve into this amalgamation of the 2 disciplines and how it is important in this day and age. Before I begin with questions, I would like to introduce our panel, and I'll begin with myself. I am the moderator. My name is Dr. Jessica Wernicke. I am the director of the Exceptional Scholars Program at Habib University, and I'm also an assistant professor of comparative humanities, specializing in history. I received my PhD from the University of Texas in 2015. And before coming to Habib, I was a British Academy Newton Fellow at Loughborough University in the UK and a postdoctoral fellow at the Higher School of Economics in Moscow in the Russian Federation. I'm also joined by Dr. Anzar Khalik, who is the Associate Dean of Teaching and Learning at Habib University, in addition to being an associate professor of integrated sciences and mathematics. He is a self-taught design thinker and has learned a variety of design research tools over the past few years. He is also the founding director of Habib University's Playground, the Center for Transdisciplinary Design and Innovation. He loves using design research methodologies in tandem with his scientific expertise, and he does this in order to explore and solve various complex problems. Our second panelist is Dr. Noman Naqvi, who is an associate professor of comparative humanities at Habib University, and he has committed himself to institutionalizing a core curriculum that combines regional and Western humanities and social thought to familiarize students with universalism here at Habib University. Dr. Naqvi is also closely involved with designing the curricula in 2 other programs at Habib, and those are social development and policy and communication and design. From the United States, we are joined by Dr. Alexander Key, who is the director of the Stanford Humanities Core, and he's also the director of undergraduate affairs. He's director of that committee. And finally, he's an associate professor of comparative literature at Stanford. He is a scholar of classic Arabic literature whose interests range across the intellectual history of the Arabic and Persian-speaking worlds. Last but not least, we are joined by Ms. Sarah Khan, who graduated from Habib University with a degree in social development and policy in June earlier this year. She's currently a master's student studying political thought at the University of Exeter. So welcome all of our panelists. I'm very excited to continue this conversation. And before we get started with more questions, I'd just like to provide a little bit of an introduction for the students who are watching at home. So liberal arts education is really the study of humanistic inquiry, or in other words, exploring issues, ideas, and methods across the natural and social sciences. Specifically, a liberal arts education can help students develop critical thinking skills and think broadly across disciplines, no matter what field it is that you potentially want to pursue in the future. So not only will this panel be discussing a liberal arts education and the benefits of that, but we'll also be discussing the employability and future postgraduate educational opportunities that a liberal arts education actually offers. As the premier liberal arts institution in Pakistan, Habib University is uniquely situated and unique in its approach to undergraduate education. As mentioned before, our 6 exceptional programs are taught by globally educated international faculty and offer, in addition to these 6 broad programs, a number of distinctive concentrations within those programs themselves. The liberal core of the Habib curriculum ensures that all students at Habib have a base in critical inquiry and develop skills that are transferable to this range of different careers, from teaching to corporate occupations to human resources to everything and anything that one could possibly imagine. So let's get to the questions. I have several of them for our panelists to help you get to know a bit more about why liberal arts is critical in this day and age, but specifically within the context of Pakistan. I'd like to begin with Dr. Key. What is liberal arts education, and how does this model emphasize a broader worldview?
Oh, morning, Jessica, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be taking part in this conversation and talking to you all this morning from California. In response to Jessica's question, I think I would say that for me, liberal arts education is a dream of multiple viewpoints, of multiple perspectives. Like the idea of the liberal arts is that one doesn't just study a single thing and pursue it in depth. It's that one takes different positions and different histories and different academic disciplines, and the structure makes you look at all of them. I think that's the key thing. Liberal arts is a structure and a dream that makes the student and encourages the student and helps the student to work through a series of the different places and ideas that human beings have had across time. So when we think about what that looks like at Stanford for the faculty here, it's a decision that we don't want our students who are fascinated in one particular aspect of the academic world or the professional world, we don't want them to just study psychology. we think there's a broader set of skills that they need to get out of their undergraduate education, which is why we encourage them through the breadth governance model that Jessica mentioned to develop skills like quantitative skills, as well as experimental skills, as well as conceptual and philosophical skills, as well as artistic skills. Because there's just no sense in which any one of these is necessarily better. It's more the sense that we want students, in between the ages of 18 and 21, roughly, to experience these different ways of looking at the world. When it comes to the idea of liberalism, the same sort of philosophy applies. So yes, there's been a particular history of liberal thought, that developed in Europe and has these famous, names like Mills and Rawls. But and this is why I said at the beginning, the dream of a liberal education, the dream and the promise of a liberal education is to say there's no sense in which those particular voices from Europe are more important or more liberal than any other positions and spaces from anywhere else in the world across time. So for me, again, and here as director of the Stanford Humanities Core, which is this undergraduate teaching global humanities program, the promise and the dream of liberal arts education is undergraduate teaching that takes seriously ideas that human beings have had, regardless of the time and place, and assesses them critically, regardless of the time and place. And that's why when I've been involved in Habib Universities, in talking to colleagues like Professor Naqvi in Habib University's liberal core, what's so impressive about the way that curriculum is structured is the extent to which it achieves the promise of having different ideas and different voices from different places in time. And that's inspirational for people like us at Stanford who are working on developing liberal arts curriculum to see the kind of global promise of the humanities working at Habib.
Fantastic. Does anyone have anything that they'd want to add to this? Dr. Khalid, Dr. Naqvi, Sarah?
It depends upon the question you have for me. So thank you for those remarks, Alexander. Yes, at Habib, so the particular way in which, so if we are to address the general question, I think, of how a liberal arts education empowers students, yeah? What is it about, because that's the essential question, yeah? So we've tried to put it, in Habib's motto as thoughtful self-cultivation. This is like the key or the formula, of course, a subject to elaboration, yeah, for empowerment, self-empowerment all your life long, yeah, is thoughtful self-cultivation. To add to what Alexander was saying, so one of the reasons that the liberal arts program came into existence in the modern period, of course, some form of universal aspiration to knowledge in systematic education has existed for a long time, yeah. But in the modern period, it was also a response to the fragmentation of knowledge, to the specialization of knowledge, yeah. So the danger was that people would develop this kind of tunnel vision, which they have actually, and right across the world. This is by no means a problem that's limited to the third world, yeah, or to the post-colonial world. It's a universal problem, yeah, universal modern problem in the structure of modern knowledge, because modern knowledge is all about specialization. So in Urdu you say "kuएं के मेंढक," a frog in a well, who has obviously a tunnel vision, yeah. And we have lots and lots of frogs in wells, all over the world, which is a real problem. And these people are educated, yeah, so they have degrees, etc., yeah. But those, so that idea, some idea of the whole, at Habib, we've tried to do it quite systematically, actually, which runs a little bit counter to the general idea of freedom of choice in terms of whatever courses. So in the Habib Liberal Core, we have, in terms of this larger project, we have forms of thought, 7 forms of thought, starting with historical and social thought, then philosophical thought. This is also something I'm quite proud of. I think it's absolutely essential, a philosophical dimension to higher education, which really goes back all the way to antiquity, is something that is that is really, really empowering for students. Just as understanding the formation of their world, the world in which they live, where do they come from? Where did it come from? So we have a course called What is Modernity? That everybody takes, and also Pakistan and Modern South Asia, which is modernity in South Asia. So the regional development of modernity. The reason that there is so much confusion in the world today is people hardly have any idea of how their world came into existence. How the world, because it's the transformation that has happened in the modern period is enormous. In the past couple of centuries, the kind of transformations that have not happened in millennia, even longer. So some sense is absolutely essential to have your bearings in the world. And it also develops a passion for knowledge in general, which is absolutely essential. This desire to research and investigate throughout your life. It's not once. So often for liberal arts education, people say, as they said at my own college, I went to this small liberal arts college called Reed College. Our motto there was learning how to learn, which is something that what a lot of liberal arts institutions claim as one of the things that they achieve. And I think that's right. Because also intrinsic to the liberal arts is this self-criticism. Self-criticism is absolutely essential to self-empowerment. If you cannot criticize yourself, you will not be able to grow. And this is also something that liberal arts education encourages. And of course, powers of articulation. So we have language and expression in our core curriculum. You have to take a certain number of courses in that. Articulation and thought are intimately related to each other. Whether it's in writing or in speech. So that is absolutely essential also.
Thank you, Dr. Naqvi. My next question is for Dr. Khalik. Can you speak about the strength of liberal arts and sciences and its interdisciplinarity? And how does this open up new opportunities for students? Dr. Naqvi also touched on this, but we'd like to hear, and I think the students would like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, thanks for this question. I am myself trained as a physicist who has gone through exactly the specialization that Dr. Naqvi was talking about. One that does not equip you with a deeper understanding of the world that you live in. In fact, in Pakistan, much like many other countries in a similar situation, there is also a hierarchy of knowledge that is created, and in terms of their utilities as well. So within Pakistan, becoming a doctor or an engineer is considered to be highest achievement. And those who are not smart enough to become either of those, they adopt other choices and disciplines. Not so surprisingly, Pakistan has been producing doctors and engineers as a priority for the past 70 years. If you want to just put this to test, if producing doctors and engineers changes the world as it is, then we don't see any evidence in Pakistan of that. And it has not just got to do with producing doctors and engineers. It is also our take on producing doctors and engineers, which are extremely poorly equipped to understand their own positioning in the world. And this disconnect with who they are, what they are required to do, what are the problems that surround them, this confusion of what their role is with the kind of skills that they are gathering is something that prevents any meaningful value addition that one can expect from someone who is educated at a certain level. And this is something we've seen in Pakistan happening a lot. And not just in Pakistan, as Dr. Naqvi was mentioning. If you look at people, especially in sciences and STEM, we are usually trained in a very, very narrow field. We know a lot about something that is very, very small. In fact, to call us educated or to call us extremely knowledgeable about the world is something that is a false claim. Perhaps our knowledge and learning for most of us starts post our PhDs, when we realize that we really don't know much about the world. So the big advantage of coming into a liberal arts university, which offers you a strength in sciences as well, which luckily Habib is specially placed to do, all of a sudden you are acquiring these very important skills that I will not deny are extremely crucial with the kind of world we live in. But all of a sudden, things start making more sense. That what will I do with this kind of knowledge? What are the problems that I need to understand? And this is really crucial, because creating technology for the sake of technology hasn't really helped us in ways. If we reflect on the past 150 years, the kind of devastation that conversion of certain technology practices from science has done to the world is something that is a great testament that if you're not reflective on practicing science in an ethical way, there isn't going to be a world in which you will live in. In fact, currently, the world that we are handing over to the younger generation that's coming in, it is not as safe, and it is not as what we got it for. And it's only going to get worse if we do not reflect on what is happening. So I think that's why when you come into a liberal arts experience, something that Habib offers in a very reflective manner, you start placing yourself that, hello, that's Pakistan, here we are. This is the reality in which we are placed. These are some of the most important problems we face. Water, for example, where does it come from? Pakistan as a country, for example, faces major energy crisis. Will burning more oil take Pakistan out of this issue? Reflect on it deeply, you realize it's not sustainable, because globally there is an effort in order to reduce the carbon emission. We don't want to hit 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius mark. Otherwise, again, Pakistan will be hit really badly if that happens. It is one of the countries which is at the highest risk of being completely eliminated if the global crisis continues the way it is. And this knowledge is extremely important to place yourself and to in the world in which you live in realistically, and to understand the consequences of the work that you are about to do. I truly think that engineers and computer scientists and other people within STEM who are well equipped with philosophy and anthropology and literature and other forms of important thought that enable you to understand things more broadly, really equip you to take sensible actions and to become a part of a community that will truly work towards improving the situation in which we live in, instead of becoming another cog in the machine that might end up creating a lot of damage.
Thank you so much. Lots to ponder there. My next question is for Ms. Khan. What specifically drew you to Habib University as a liberal arts university? And what was it about the model of liberal arts education that attracted you?
So this answer is going to be a little personal, of course, but also a bit specific to the social development and policy program. At the time that I was completing my A-levels, it was in the humanities, I knew that I wanted to stay in this field. So I learned about Habib through word of mouth, and then it was a newly established university, still in its 4th year, no batch had yet graduated. So I decided to look into it, and what attracted me most was the STP program that Habib had to offer, which I knew that studying at Habib would allow me to continue studying subjects as diverse as economics, histories, politics, comparative literature, which had sort of been my eclectic subject combination in A-levels as well. And this did in fact prove to be true. At Habib, I got exposure not only to these fields, but also a number of other diverse yet intersecting fields, such as international relations, international political economy, policymaking, and especially histories of different regions. This is why I called it histories of different regions as opposed to a collective singular, from Latin America to Russia to South Asia, the Middle East.
Wonderful. My next question is for Dr. Key and Dr. Naqvi, and you can decide amongst yourselves which of you would like to go first. The Habib Liberal Core is adapted to Pakistan's own local and global context to provide a holistic educational experience. Can you share your ideas about this in particular? And again, this is something we've touched on a little bit, but if you can provide a bit more in depth of a response.
Alexander?
Yeah, maybe I'll start very quickly and then pass to you and back. I think what excites me most, because Habib University asked me to review the Habib Humanities Core, and that process of them asking me to kind of come in from the outside and look at it was what introduced me to the liberal core and the way that programming and global humanities work at Habib. And to be honest, what excites me most about the work that's being done at Habib is the seriousness with which it takes exactly the different histories that Ms. Khan was talking about. It's this sense that it's not just a matter of you teach one history, be it a Pakistani history or a European history, and then dip briefly into others. It's a matter of you take each of them seriously on their own terms and work through them. I'm thinking of Nauman's Hikmah course, which is rightly very well regarded. It's a matter of then once you're in.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you explain Hikmah for our viewers?
Yeah, so I'm going to let
I'll do that right after Alexander finishes saying what he's saying.
I'll let the expert talk. But I think one of the things, just as Jessica highlights, just by bringing in a non-English word for an English-speaking audience, you kind of shift out of the usual vocabulary of liberal, and you start using the word hikmah. And maybe people don't know what the word hikmah means or what it's being used to do. And that's exactly what happens as soon as you start taking multiple histories and literatures and philosophies seriously. The words change. And so if you just do this quickly, if you just kind of gesture to them and then move on with what you're really interested in, you never get a chance to think seriously through it. And what I think is important about what Habib is doing, and part of what Stanford's trying to do in the Humanities Core, is to take these different approaches seriously. And that means taking the time to learn some new words and to learn some new ways of thinking about the world, which again fits into what Dr. Khalik was saying. But it takes time, and you have to commit to it, and you have to have a undergraduate educational structure that encourages and supports the students as they commit to learning new words and new ways of thinking.
Thank you. Yes. So, the problem is, first of all, for me, so since I was the first dean of the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, as well as the first director of the Habib Liberal Core, one of the problems for me as a result, because my formal education was in anthropology, so in any case, anthropology has been in the forefront for over a century in relativizing the West, in saying that there is absolutely no reason to prioritize the West in the way that we do. And this is not just in the West, obviously, because the West is not just in the West. The West, right? The West is everywhere. So the problem therein is, the problem is not of the way the nationalists looked at it, yeah, which was that these are outsiders, the West is the outside, but the West is not the outside, right? So, so the problem is that you cannot, as a result, see your own experience. This is what I'm struck by again and again. People are completely alienated because they simply do not have the concepts which were part of the tradition and of the inheritance. Yeah, they do not have the concepts to actually be able to. Literally, concept means something that with which you hold on. In German, it's very clear. It's Begriff. Yeah, something with which you grasp something. Yeah. So what has happened is, as a result of this tremendous philosophical inheritance being obfuscated, yeah, people are unable to make sense of their own experience, and then they impose abstractions upon their own experience and distort their experience. Now that sounds all very abstract. This cause hikmah. Hikmah literally means, and it's actually in the Quran itself. The Quran says calls hikmah khairun kasiran, which means the greatest good, yeah, the most abundant of goods. Hikmah is wisdom, yeah, which is philosophy. Actually, hikmah is the word. So they use two words when they translated philosophy from the Greeks. Everybody knows of this Greek inheritance of Muslim societies. Yeah, they translated, on the one hand, transliterated philosophy as falsafa, but then quickly assimilated it under the term hikmah, which is the word for wisdom. Actually, this worked well in antiquity because ancient philosophy in the West was also all about wisdom, unlike philosophy today, which has very little to do with wisdom, right? So especially, I think, unfortunately, in the Anglo-American world, which is, of course, how what we came under the colonization of, yeah? So that's why we first start out with this global thing, yeah, modernity, and then move to the region, modernity in the region, and only then, after having seen that the form of life that we inhabit, the way we live now, yeah, our hopes and aspirations, the very organization of our societies, the forms of our culture, all of this is historically specific to the modern period. We can then, yeah, and in fact, it's not the best period in human history by any means. It's an extraordinarily destructive period. Yeah, it's the most violent period of human history. The past couple of 100 years have just been terrible. Yeah, right across the planet for human societies, cultures, and for the environment, for the ecology, for the earth, for other species. And it's a accelerating process, as Anzar was also talking about. Yeah, so once you understand the specificity of these modern ways of thinking, nationalism, for instance, which has penetrated religion and destroyed its philosophical content. Yeah, that's what nationalism has done, has made all quote unquote religious traditions, yeah, sucked the philosophical content out of the sapiential content, referring to wisdom, the sapiential content, the wisdom content, the philosophical content of all of these religious traditions. It's happening all over the planet, and it's happening here as well. Yeah, so hikmah and Jahan-e-Urdu, speaking of courses which have titles in other languages, Jahan-e-Urdu is the world of Urdu. Yeah, so that's the other thing. We live in this society where we have linguistic apartheid. Literally, that's what one of my mentors, Dr. Iqbal Ahmed, used to say, that in Pakistan we have linguistic apartheid. So we make a genuine effort to try to undo that linguistic apartheid through this course and other courses at Habib. So that's my take. So it's a moves between the very global and the very local. Yeah, some people call that glocal. That's what we are at Habib, right?
Thank you, Dr. Naqvi. My next question is for Dr. Khalik and Dr. Key. How do you think Pakistan can benefit from a liberal arts model of education? And Dr. Naqvi, you were pointing at this as well.
Dr. Key, you want to go first on this?
Okay, yeah, and I think really what I'd like to do is sort of double down on what you were saying before, Dr. Khalik, because when you were talking about developing different skills as part of the education, like based on your own experience, I mean, that's That's exactly what I say every week to the Stanford undergrads who come and see me in my role as Director of Undergraduate Studies for my department. And they're concerned about whether taking comparative literature will help them get a job and which job it will help them get. Or they're concerned about, they don't know which job they want to do after they study, and they don't know which courses are going to equip them for that job. Or in many cases, kind of the Stanford undergraduate culture and often their parents have pushed them to do a certain course of study, and they're not finding that they're no longer optimistic about it as they come towards the end of their undergraduate education. So all these are all really concerns that you have as an undergraduate, concerns that you have about what is going to happen in the next 10 years of your life. Like, where are you going to be at age 30 when you're in college? And you don't know where you're going to be at age 30. And what is college going to do to help you in the next sort of 10 years of your life? And I think that just to sort of re-say what Dr. Khalid was saying, the great advantage of liberal education models is that they give students more options for the next 10, 20 years of their lives. And they give students a broader skill set. So what I always say to the students is that and I worked in human rights and development for a number of years after I finished my undergraduate education. I worked in Palestine and human rights, and then on a World Bank project doing development. And what I say to the students over and over again is the employers don't care what your major was. Like, employers don't care what it says on your transcript. Sometimes they might look at the GPA, but often not. Like, they're not interested in the sort of, what did you major in? What did you minor in? Was your GPA like a little bit higher or a little bit lower? What employers care about is the skills. Like, they care about what skills do you have? And how do you perform if we test those skills in our whatever interview process we've set up? And that kind of, what I'm trying to do is sort of free students from the fear that if they go on one track in college, they're kind of locked into it. And I keep trying to say, no, this is not the case. Like, you're not locked into one track. So if you're not locked into one track, then what you want to get out of college is as broad a skill set as possible to give you as many options as possible for the next 10, 20 years of your life. And I think that the liberal arts education and the way that Habib University is structured, like the liberal core and the STEM core, is exactly that kind of broadness.
I'll just build on the same thread. We are also living in very unique times where technologies are developing at a very rapid pace, which require you to acquire a certain kind of skill set. But there is absolutely no guarantee that the technology that exists today and you're preparing for it will exist by the time you graduate. So there is no promise there. And so all of a sudden you start thinking about, how I'm coming to a university for 4 years, I'm investing my time. And when I walk out, they tell me that the discipline in which you have majored in is not relevant or interesting anymore. And that is happening at a very rapid pace. So what is it that you require in order to respond to this extremely changing world? Well, it's not that you start all of a sudden thinking about a million different skills or ideas that you want to work on, but you essentially start opening yourself up to the ability of learning and unlearning and ability to quickly adapt. And on top of that, develop a set of skill, which is extremely important for you to understand different roles in which you are going to get into. One of the major advantages of the liberal arts educational experience is that it doesn't define you with a tag. And you can get rid of the tag as soon as you graduate And you can choose to be someone that is not defined by the degree that they did their initial work in. But the degree did open them up for a variety of different skills, ideas, and thoughts. And now they can build on that because they have the ability to unlearn what they have done before, relearn something else, and very quickly develop new skills. Now, in the context of Pakistan, we are in a very specific situation. The country is facing all sorts of problems. Our health infrastructure is a mess. Our food development is a mess. Our water infrastructure is a mess. The energy is an absolute mess. The political governance is an absolute mess. And the biggest problem that Pakistan sees is that we do not have leaders who are equipped to think about these problems in a serious manner or in an intellectual manner, in an equipped manner. And the kind of education we have been providing in Pakistan for the past 6-7 decades does not equip you with that skill. And this is further increased by the problem that you cannot have someone from outside of Pakistan come and solve it for you. They do not know the context. So bringing in these people who have made great changes in their country and expecting them to do miracles in Pakistan will not happen. And something that has worked, for example, in New York will not work in Karachi. Even something that has been tried and tested in Karachi will not work in another city of Lahore, for example. And that's why you need very thoughtful people here. We have another problem. Our industry is not very imaginative at large. They are an industry that basically just produces stuff. They don't create stuff. Innovation isn't there a lot. So you need people who are very cognizant of the problems around them. And we see that there is a big change that's happening in Pakistan, that instead of becoming parts of these large companies that have been existing for a while and don't let you do creative stuff, a lot of new ideas are coming up. Pakistan is going through a major startup change as well. A huge industry is coming up where people are very interested in solving the problems of education, of governance, of law, of education, of finance. And you see, people who are solving these problems don't necessarily come from these disciplines. These are engineers, these are philosophers, these are policymakers, these are designers. It's a group of people who are working on these ideas. And no surprise here that there's no problem of the world that is solved by people from a single discipline. And so you need to be able to understand the different perspectives that are going to add value to the problem you're trying to solve. Say I'm an engineer and I'm very interested in solving the trash problem of the country. But I really need to develop an understanding what kind of trash is being produced and why at the very first place trash of this kind is coming in before I start thinking about how to solve it. And I can't do that through technology alone. I would need people who understand policy and frameworks and laws in order to help us really create a meaningful change. I truly believe that if Habib and more places like Habib come up and ensure that people develop a really deeper understanding of the problems through a multiplicity of lenses, only then they will be able to create sustainable frameworks that are going to solve the problems that we are facing. And just let me repeat it, no one from the outside will come and solve it for us. So we need these thoughtful individuals who understand the problem from a variety of lenses in order to really attack these problems from an informed place.
Thank you, Dr. Khalid. And that leads me to my next question for Ms. Khan. Can you speak about the employability or post-graduation success of a liberal arts education?
Yes, well, the best thing about Habib's liberal arts degree is that you can curate your particular degree to your liking and in line with your interests within the major of the particular program or major that you are pursuing. So for example, if you're someone who wants to specialize in a certain field because you're certain that you want to pursue that field in your postgraduate work life or for your postgraduate education, you can choose to take courses in that particular field. For example, if it's policy design, you can take courses in health policy, energy policy, program planning, political economy, all of which are interrelated fields. They are diverse, but they're interrelated, and being situated in one doesn't mean that you won't need to have knowledge about the other. So alongside this, you will also in the Habib classroom experience a good blend of rigorous classroom learning alongside experience of on-ground field work under the supervision of professors and lecturers who are very familiar with the discipline as well as the local Pakistani context. And because the liberal arts education gives you exposure to a number of different fields, students who do tend to pursue a liberal arts degree are generally very polymathic. So that, which means, you know, they can boast knowledge of a number of different disciplines as opposed to being restricted to just one. So for example, like I was just saying, politics, policymaking, even history, philosophy, religion, etc. Which is why if you do choose to pursue a liberal arts degree, it will for sure open a number of different career pathways for you. For example, a lot of my friends are now working in the journalism sector. A few are working in the energy sector. Some are working in the health sector. I myself, before I decided to pursue postgraduate education, was working in the education sector for a while. And speaking of postgraduate education, I am so very grateful to the education that I did receive at Habib, because that really helps me approach difficult texts in terms of understanding and interpretation of them, and especially in class discussions.
Can I add something to that, Jessica?
Absolutely. Please do.
It really needs to be emphasized that there are lots and lots of different kinds of things to do in the world, right? We live in a highly complex world. We live in highly complex economies, but our ideas of professions, our ideas of profession are continue to be totally out of sync with everything that is happening around us, in fact, which is very much part of our experience. This is actually both Anzar and Alexander have pointed to this too. So liberal arts degree, so, you know, some of the most successful people in the world today do a bunch of different kinds of things in the course of their lives. So it's simply not the case that people continue to do the same thing, throughout their lives. This is just not a feature of our world anymore. Now, it's precisely a liberal arts education that empowers you to be able to make those kinds of transitions. To be able to, you know, think differently, to grow, and to learn to learn how to do entirely new things. I mean, that's a, you know, extremely empowering way of living. Quite apart from the fact that it is, of course, just a feature. If that is how one must talk about it, a feature of our economy, or a feature of our global economy and our local economies. I mean, the numbers of kinds of things that people do today, even, you know, compared to, I don't know, I'm only just over 50 years old, well, compared to when I was young, is remarkable. I mean, there are so many different kinds of professions and people who are highly, highly successful. And the other thing, of course, leadership. Nobody emerged as a genuine leader, by being this frog in a well. It's precisely powers of articulation and powers of vision, that are essential, broad vision, and being able to articulate yourself accordingly, that makes for leadership. That's essential to leadership qualities, and you can't really have that without the kind of broad and thoughtful education, that a liberal arts education aspires to be.
Thank you so much. One last question for each of our panelists. What would be your message to students who are interested in pursuing a liberal arts education? Just for the sake of ease, can we start with Dr. Key?
Thanks. I actually just wanted to share one of my students at Stanford, who's now a JD MBA candidate. And we asked our alumni to kind of reflect on what their literature educations had given them. And he says that he's been known in all the different jobs he's had in a Boston consulting group and at a startup. He's always been known as the lit major, like the person who studied literature. And he says, for good reason, like nothing could have prepared me to digest complex arguments, balance competing perspectives, or just flat out write, like studying a literature degree. And I think that's what employers are looking for. It's like Ansar said, like diverse teams are more effective teams. So if you're running a team, you want a diverse group of people working for you. You want the lit major, you want, you know. So I think that kind of, students should have that kind of confidence that their liberal arts education is equipping them successfully for exactly the world that Dr. Naqvi described.
Dr. Khalik?
Sure. So I will just say this to the students who are aspiring to be a part of a liberal arts experience. The world we live in is very complex, and it's going to get more complex as the time proceeds. And this is the form of education that when Habib University was being created, we genuinely believed that the other existing educational experiences are out of line with what the world really needs. And so we created this especially in order to understand the complex challenges of our times. I did not major as a liberal arts because there was one, no options here, and second, no understanding. But you are very uniquely placed that you have both that option and an opportunity. And if I had been given the chance again, I would pick a liberal arts degree over any other experience, because I do not want to feel disconnected with the reality of the world, because that could have completely changed me as an individual. So I think you have a chance to really, really become a part of an educational experience that can be intellectually very, very inspiring and very rewarding in terms of your connection with the world, with lots of promise of success in all means, intellectually placing yourself as a good human, but and also achieving goodness in the world with the work that you are going to do, that will bring you success on different parameters which are kept important, or which should be considered important in modern day and age.
Thank you so much. Ms. Khan, do you have anything to add?
I would just say, first of all, don't be scared. If you think that a liberal arts degree is your calling, then you should definitely pursue it. And contrary to societal indoctrination, a liberal arts degree, as everybody on this panel has tried to drill into you, is not going to jeopardize your future chances of finding good employment or a good degree, postgraduate degree, or what have you. However, this is a common misconception about, with students who do decide to pursue a liberal arts degree. There's nothing inherently easy about a liberal arts degree. You will have to read a lot and all the time, and whatever you can get your hands on. You will have to be prepared to think about the present and about your present situation, and you will have to be prepared to think of yourself as a historical being. You will have to keep updated on current affairs, and again, really ensure that you do read widely to be able to participate in class discussions and approach texts that are going to be difficult.
Thank you. And Dr. Naqvi, please, if you have any last thoughts before we wrap up.
Well, I'd like to tell young people to cultivate themselves thoughtfully. Take care of yourself. Yeah. This is a really old educational idea, which was really important, and unfortunately we have lost sight of. Yeah, is that we need to take care of ourselves, which means take care of what is essential to us. Yeah, not take care of ourselves as in use various lotions or particular kinds of soap or anything like that. Take care of yourself. As Kabir said, build yourself, create yourself. Do not destroy yourself. Do not torture yourself. Build yourself, create yourself, take care of yourself.
Very inspiring last words for our panel today. So if after this session you find yourself drawn to the concept of liberal arts education, apply to join Habib University now. Thank you for joining us. We are very grateful for your time, and please feel free to reach out to us if you are interested in finding out more about Habib University. Thank you very much.